But I'm disappointed, along with a lot of my Democratic colleagues, that you stood here and took an oath to tell the truth, then repeatedly failed to do so to this committee. Let me just say, if you dance with the devil long enough, he's liable to follow you home. I hope that you will stop dancing around the truth and start telling the truth.
Kristi Noem thought she had this hearing under control until Bennie Thompson called her out for lying under oath.
You stood here and took an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Then you sat down and dodged the truth over and over and over for a little more than 3 hours, so help you God.
When Kristi Noem walked into that congressional hearing, it was all about formality. Hand raised, oath taken, the promise to tell the truth. But what followed? A marathon of sidestepping, half answers, and shocking responses.
You repeatedly testified that you and the Department of Homeland Security will follow the Constitution, the laws, and the order of the Supreme Court.
This wasn't just about politics, as the accusations were explosive. Reports of locking away U.S. citizens in foreign prisons, forcing out sick American kids, the kind of claims that make you stop and say, wait, what?
Well, the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And yet, a federal court found that the Department of Homeland Security, under your watch, believes that it has a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process.
The second she sat down, the oath she took started to crumble. For over 3 hours, she dodged direct questions, twisted details, and avoided taking any responsibility.
But you just testified before this committee that Kilmar Garcia will never return to the United States. So you didn't tell the truth to this committee again when you said that you comply with court orders and decisions. You've overseen the deportation of U.S. citizen children and have claimed that their parents chose to take their children with them. But you produced no evidence that the mother, let alone both parents, of those children freely gave consent to have their children deported from the United States.
Congressman Bennie Thompson wasn't buying it. He called it exactly what it was, betrayal, and then went in hard. His message was clear. This wasn't just about hiding facts, it was about actively working against the truth while under oath. And if you thought that was it, think again. Wait until you see what happened next.
I can't believe that we would send somebody or anyone from our country somewhere else and say, well, we cut off all communication. We're a better country than that. And I just...
The Fifth Amendment clearly says no person can be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. Yet DHS, the very agency meant to protect Americans, allegedly skipped that right entirely. Noem didn't even deny it. She simply moved on, as if violating civil rights was just business as usual.
You've given yourself the unilateral right to deport anyone you deem a threat. You refuse to comply with court orders that try to stop you. That puts all of us at risk. Beyond your false testimony about the administration's deportation policies, you falsely stated that the administration is focused on a full range of DSH's missions. Instead, your budget request appears to reflect a view that DHS's sole purpose is to be a border wall construction agency that deports U.S. citizen children with cancer.
In another shocking case, the Supreme Court unanimously ordered a detainee named Killer Garcia to be brought back to the U.S. Noem's department refused, and she told Congress outright that Garcia would never return. Imagine that a top federal official openly admits she wouldn't follow the highest court in the country. That's not just arrogance, it's a direct attack on the Constitution, and it didn't stop there.
Truth to this committee today, when you said you would follow the Constitution and comply with due process. You also testified that you follow orders of the Supreme Court of the United States and all courts. But the Supreme Court unanimously directed the government to facilitate the return of Kilmar Garcia to the United States.
Things got even darker when the hearing turned to the alleged deportations of American children, some gravely ill, even battling cancer, without their parents' consent. Thompson revealed that DHS lured families to ICE appointments, then blocked them from seeing lawyers or having their cases heard by a judge.
In fact, everyone involved in those cases say that the mothers, in fact, did not want their children, especially their sick American children, deported. In fact, your agency lured families to ICE appointments under false pretenses, lied to them, refused to let them speak with an attorney or children's father, and deported them before a court had time to even hear the case.
No paperwork, no hearings, just families torn apart in secret. Mothers have since spoken out, saying they never agreed to send their children away, and while Noem didn't claim otherwise, she had no evidence to prove her actions were legal. But this was only the tip of the iceberg. The real drama was still to come.
You've overseen the deportation of U.S. citizen children and have claimed that their parents chose to take their children with them. But you produce no evidence that the mother, let alone both parents, of those children freely gave consent to have their children deported from the United States.
While the public was focused on these deportations, something even more dangerous was happening behind the scenes. Noem was gutting DHS from within, slashing funding for cybersecurity, emergency response, and aviation security. Agencies like FEMA and CISA lost huge chunks of their staff.
Cuts to cybersecurity, emergency preparedness, and aviation security. Even before asking Congress for these budget cuts, you've overseen mass reductions in the workforce at CISA and FEMA.
When Congress asked how many people had been fired or pushed out, DHS refused to answer, and Noem admitted she had no written plans for FEMA at all, leaving the country vulnerable in the middle of rising cyber threats and natural disasters.
Repeated requests from this committee on how many people have been fired or have been bullied into quitting before their tenure, DHS has refused to share that information. So it should worry every American that we do not know how many people are left at FEMA to respond to disasters and how many cyber defenders still work at CISA as China and other adversaries attack our systems every day.
But there was one thing she refused to touch: the budget for the border wall. Everything else could be cut, but wall funding was untouchable. Critics say she's turned DHS into a one-track operation focused on deportations and political optics while ignoring real threats to national security. And if you think it stops here, you're in for a shock.
And you've made clear in response to my questioning, you have no written plans for FEMA. It is very apparent that also is no plan for CISA, where you are trying to gut the agency's funding and falsely claiming that CISA is a censorship agency. Since CISA never censored anyone. But now we are all paying the price for you buying into a baseless conspiracy theory. Secretary Noem.
By the end of the hearing, Thompson had heard enough. He looked her straight in the eye and said, "You did not tell the truth to this committee today." And then he delivered the line that hung in the air: "If you dance with the devil long enough, he's liable to follow you home."
But I'm disappointed, along with a lot of my Democratic colleagues, that you stood here and took an oath to tell the truth, then repeatedly failed to do so to this committee. Let me just say, if you dance with the devil long enough, he's liable to follow you home. I hope that you will stop dancing around the truth and start telling the truth so this committee can do its work, helping to defend DHS from the attacks you've launched against it.
This wasn't just a political argument. It was a clear warning. Noem's actions, as laid out in that hearing, painted a disturbing picture. An official who ignored due process, defied the Supreme Court, deported sick American children, and dismantled the country's safety infrastructure, all while hiding behind political slogans. This wasn't incompetence, it was deliberate. And as Thompson made clear, when power goes unchecked, the very institutions meant to protect the public can be turned into weapons of harm. If DHS, the agency meant to defend Americans, becomes a tool for abuse, then no one is truly safe. And if leaders like this aren't held accountable, the next chapter could be far worse. What do you guys think? Tell us in the comments below.